We've all seen it. Heck, I've lived it. The messy social media messages, the public tea spilling, and the absolute embarrassment of finding out that your life is a lie through a Facebook post or an Instagram message that your spouse thought was hidden. What if it didn't have to be like that, though? What if you could find out before their affair got too deep? Statistics show that over 20% of marriages deal with infidelity, and most affairs last for years because they thrive in the dark. It's time to turn the lights on. Verified.com is the world's first searchable relationship registry. It's not just an app, it's a digital boundary for your marriage. When you register your spouse on Verified, you are claiming your relationship on a global scale, whether you're talking, you're dating, or you're married. If another man or woman is being told your spouse is single or divorced and they search for your spouse on the registry, they find you instead. Now, here's the game changer. Verified allows you to speak one-on-one and directly with that other person. No gaslighting from your spouse. No he said, she said. No, oh my God, you went through my phone. How could you betray my trust like that? And zero social media drama. Just the truth, person to person, before things go too far. Don't wait for that gut feeling to become a nightmare. Because even if you think your spouse would never, there's an even better chance that you just never know. Register your spouse today using the link in the show notes and lock in your legacy to protect your peace. Marriage isn't supposed to feel like roommates, but it doesn't have to feel like a war either. Hi, I'm Cameron Elricky, certified marriage coach and a relationship expert. Every week on Married and Connected, I bring you real talk, hard truths, and practical tools you can start using right away. Whether you've been married 2 years or 42, this is where you'll find hope, encouragement, and steps that actually work. So let's make your marriage feel good again, starting right now. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Married and Connected podcast. I am Cameron Elricky, your host, and today we are diving into one of the most overlooked yet powerful ingredients in a thriving marriage, and that is humility. Now, I know humility isn't always the sexiest topic, but hear me out. Without it, your relationship will stay stuck, your conflicts will escalate, and true intimacy will always feel just out of reach. And I am speaking from experience on this. This is something that Mo and I have struggled to develop in our own relationship, but now that we are getting there, man, is it so much better. Today, we are going to break it all down. What humility actually is, why relationships cannot grow without it, how to develop humility if it doesn't come naturally to you, because it doesn't to most of us, how to demonstrate humility in tough conversations without feeling like you're losing, and what happens when humility is missing in a relationship. Of course, as always, we're going to be pulling in research from some of the best relationship experts, including Dr. John Gottman, Dr. Andrea Vitz, and others. So stay with me. All right, we're going to start off with what is humility. As so many other words in relationships, respect, love, care, kindness, comfort, support, cheating, all of these have to be defined. And a lot of people mistake humility for weakness. But humility is actually a strength. It's the ability to see yourself accurately, to admit when you're wrong, and to put your relationships above your ego. Oh man, is that one a tough one. I am currently reading a book on Audible called Ego is the Enemy, and it is by Ryan Holiday. Such a good book. If you are needing a book recommendation, such a good one. Highly recommend. Humility in a relationship isn't about thinking less of yourself. It is about thinking of yourself less. It's the ability to acknowledge that you don't have all the answers, that your partner's perspective matters just as much as yours, and that growth only happens when both individuals are willing to learn from each other. Now, this is where Mo and I struggled, is that it's called accepting influence. When your partner, for example, has an experience in homeschooling or in public school or in, let's say, finances or something like that, and you don't have that experience, you also aren't going to sit there and look up all the research on your own. You need to accept their influence. Now, those are just a few examples. There are hundreds of examples out there. The point is that if your partner knows something more than what you do on a specific topic, you need to accept their influence. That's not to say that you can't go back and do the research yourself, but if most likely you're not going to, like, I am not good at finances. This is not an area where I have a lot of expertise. I'm also not going to sit there and look up all of the different politics of the world and what's happening and what's going on and who's battling with who and who's on whose side and all the things. I don't care. I don't care. Those are not That's not something that interests me. But it is something that interests Mo and that he is very good with. He's also very good with finances. So when it comes to financial matters of our family, I defer to him. I accept his influence. Now, like I said, that wasn't always the case in our marriage, but now that it is, things are so much easier. He is not someone who is going to do any kind of research on public school systems or what they're teaching or homeschooling or the statistics behind homeschooling. He's not looking up vaccinations. He's not looking up, art projects. He's not looking up child psychology and development. That's just not his jam. That is my jam. Those are all my jam. So he's going to accept my influence on certain things like that. Now, what happens if your partner doesn't accept your influence without humility? You have no humility in your relationship, let's say. That's where relationships become stagnant. They're dominated by pride, defensiveness, and an unwillingness to compromise. But when humility is present, a relationship can thrive and it deepens emotional connection and fosters true intimacy. So, what does humility in a relationship really look like? How can you develop it? And most importantly, how can you demonstrate humility during difficult conversations? Dr. John Gottman's research on successful marriages has shown that the happiest, most connected couples share one major trait. They accept the influence from each other, just like I was just talking about. And accepting influence requires humility. It means that you are willing to listen, to learn, and to change when necessary. If your partner constantly calls you an asshole, there's a really good chance that you're an a-hole. If your partner constantly tells you that you're defensive or that they're worried about your eating habits, that you are not an emotionally safe space, there's a really good chance that you're not an emotionally safe space or that your eating habits need to change in order for you to be the healthiest version of yourself. Humility doesn't say, I'm not important. It says, I'm not more important than you. And that shift in thinking changes everything. I heard this quote the other day, and this was so profoundly impactful. It was from Mel Robbins. It was from Mel Robbins' podcast on relationships. Fantastic podcast episode. She has her husband on there. She and Chris talk about a lot of different topics that are fantastic. But she talks about the fact that deal breakers are things that make you give up on your dreams and your values. But the vast majority of things that people think are deal breakers and are frustrated about are actually just differences in priorities. And this comes back to humility because when we're having these arguments, a lot of times you'll see couples that, like, let's say they have different political affiliations. One's a Democrat, one's a Republican. And each person is fighting and arguing over which political affiliation is right. The motive behind the argument is that they're trying to get their partner to see why the partner should believe the way that they do, instead of just accepting who they are and accepting the way that they believe. Okay? Now, if it's something that's going to completely derail your values or bring you down or just absolutely be a dream killer, oh, yeah, I don't believe that women should be in the workforce. And you really believe that, that you're passion and your purpose is to have a job as a woman, that's going to be a deal breaker. But if it's just something that we're arguing with to be right or to be manipulative or to prove to your partner why they should believe the way that you do, that's when you're going to have a lot of problems. And that's where your thinking needs to change from I'm not more important than you. Okay? So what does humility look like in marriage? And we're talking like on a day-to-day scale. Here's a few real life examples. It's admitting when you're wrong without being defensive. I am wrong all of the time. All the time. I will say like, well, the dishes need to be emptied in the dishwasher, and then I'll open the dishwasher and it's actually emptied. It's things like, again, things that I'm not very good at with finances or with numbers or like keeping the gas above E in the car. Instead of getting defensive when my husband comes to me and talks to me about these things, that's when I need to admit, you know what? Yeah, I screwed up. I should have filled up last night. I thought I was going to have a little bit more time this morning, and I didn't. This is another place where I have to admit where I'm wrong. I am perpetually late to everything, and it's not because I disrespect other people's time. It's because I have, let's say, 7 minutes before I need to walk out the door, and instead of just being 7 minutes earlier, my perpetual toxic trait is that I believe that in that 7 minutes, I can repaint the bathroom and do a load of dishes and 3 loads of towels and go through, my kids' clothes that don't fit all in that 7 minutes. And then I'm 15 minutes late. So this is a habit that I'm actively working on. If you want to know the vulnerable truth about me right now, this is me being humble and having humility and saying, yeah, this is where I need to change and this is where I'm screwing up. It's saying I don't know when you actually don't know instead of pretending that you do. And it's asking for feedback instead of assuming that you always have the best ideas. Maybe your partner has really good ideas. I mean, you were one of them. You were one of their ideas. So doesn't that in and of itself prove that they have really good ideas? I think so. It's apologizing first, even when you don't feel like it. I once heard that I love you means never having to say you're sorry. And to be honest, I feel like that is the biggest line of bullcrap I've ever heard in my life. If you are truly in love, you are apologizing a lot. A lot, a lot. And here's a big one. It's resisting the urge to win every argument. Because in marriage, if one of you wins, the relationship loses. It's listening to understand, not to respond. This is so hard because as human beings, we are wired just to respond. Our partners talking. We have a thought that comes into our head. We stop listening to anything they say after that thought goes into our head. And we're just listening for a little bit of a break in the conversation to where we can jump right in and insert that thought. So instead of waiting for your turn to talk, humility allows you to truly hear your partner's thoughts and feelings. It's admitting when you're wrong. No one is perfect, and mistakes are inevitable. So owning up to them instead of getting defensive strengthens trust. Recognizing your partner's needs and emotions. This is a really, really big deal. I'm doing monthly workshops, and tonight was the first monthly workshop that I started, and it was over 5 ways to improve your communication. So if you are not following me on Instagram, you need to be following me so that you know about these monthly workshops. But we talked about conversations and how a lot of times in communication, your partner is communicating an underlying need or an underlying emotion with their body language. Now, if you have a passive aggressive communication style, you're going to say things like, I'm fine when you're really not fine, which is a whole nother problem in and of itself. But partner, if you're hearing your partner say that they're fine, but their body language is saying something else, this is where you say, you're not fine. I can tell you're not fine because your body language is saying you're mad, you're sad, you're needing space. Is that right? It's humility shifts the focus from only your experience to the shared experience of your relationship. It's choosing growth over being right. It is so easy to dig in your heels during a disagreement, but humility allows you to ask, what can I learn from this? Without humility, relationships become a battlefield of egos, and each person is more concerned with proving their point than nurturing the connection. And that is a question that needs to start being asked is, am I really trying to fight or am I trying to connect here? Do I really value connection over this argument, or is this argument going to matter in 5 years? Because with humility, both partners create a safe space where love and growth and respect flourish. So what happens when a marriage lacks humility? Let's flip the script a little bit. What happens if it's missing? Will arguments become battles for dominance instead of opportunities for understanding? So we know, if you have been here for a while and you've listened to most of my podcasts, so I've talked a lot about Dr. Gottman discussing and researching and showing that a marriage needs 3 things to thrive: commitment, trust, and friendship. Now, if your friend is talking and you're not listening to understand, are you guys going to be friends very long? Probably not, because you're not a safe space for them to come to talk to. Okay? So why is your partner different? Your partner is the most important relationship that you have. So you have to understand where they're coming from in order for them to let you into their world. You have to be able to be in their world in order to know them. Because I guarantee you, they're not the same person that they were 6 months, a year, 5, 10, 15 years ago. When both partners refuse to step outside their own perspectives, it becomes a war to see whose perspective can be proven, and it usually ends in an argument or one person feeling so defeated that they just give up or give in. You're right, you win. Just so that they don't have to keep going on the cycle of insanity and anger. Apologies are rare, and when they do happen, they're half-hearted. So it's saying something like, I said I was sorry. What more do you want from me? Or, sorry, what are we having for dinner tonight? Oh, yeah, sorry I said that. You're holding on to your pride instead of truly admitting your fault. Resentment builds because neither partner truly feels heard, validated, or valued. Emotional intimacy fades because vulnerability feels unsafe, and this is counterproductive in what a relationship is constructed for in the first place. Whether you have an avoidant, anxious, disorganized, or secure attachment, we are all wired for connection. And we want to be close to the other person, but if they feel unsafe, either because their emotions are so big and projected, loud and aggressive, or because our partner runs away or dismisses our emotions because they can't handle their own, let alone ours, the underlying message is the person I love the most in this entire world doesn't love me back or doesn't have my back. And it's small bits of betrayal over and over and over. Dr. Gottman talks about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse in relationships. So in order from how they affect your relationship, the least to the greatest: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And guess what? Every single one of these destructive behaviors thrives and grows like the mold on the leftovers in the back of your refrigerator in an environment without humility. You're repeating the same conflicts. Without humility, couples argue in circles, never resolving core issues, and you're just on this hamster wheel, stuck in a loop, and the relationship ends up with that autopsy report of death by 1,000 paper cuts, like I was talking about earlier. Growth requires self-awareness. and the ability to reflect on how your actions impact your relationship. It is so stinking easy to sit there and point the finger at your partner, but for every finger you're pointing at them, you've got 3 pointing back at yourself. You have to work on yourself first. You have to clean up your side of the street. Without humility, personal and relational growth becomes nearly impossible. So, why is humility so hard? Why do so many of us resist admitting when we're wrong or letting go of our pride? Well, like everything else in a relationship, it comes down to childhood experiences. If you grew up in a household where admitting mistakes meant punishment, you learned that being wrong equals being unsafe. Society also feeds us this lie that strength means never backing down. But real strength is knowing when to stand firm and when to soften. And this was a point that was really, really hard for me. And I'll be honest, I still struggle with it at times. Admitting mistakes, I was criticized a lot growing up. And I felt like I constantly had to defend myself. So my strength came from never backing down and fighting to the death on certain situations that don't really need to be fought for at all. Have you ever heard of the let them theory? This is also from Mel Robbins. If someone believes that you're a purple dinosaur, let them believe it. If someone believes that they need to leave you in order to have a better relationship, let them leave. There's someone better out there. If someone believes that they don't need to change, cool. Let them have their pride. Let them have their ego. You change because you're going to have a better life in the end because you changed. Fixed mindsets are rarely successful. Sometimes pride is just fear in disguise. Fear of being unworthy, fear of being taken advantage of, fear of not being enough. Here's an interesting twist. Times, the very thing that humbles us the most is the pain that we go through. Have you ever gone through something really, really difficult? A betrayal, a divorce, major failure, personal crisis, and come out the other side seeing life completely differently? That's what happened with me and Mo's divorce. And then we reconciled. Both of us saw life completely differently. And that, my friends, is humility at work. Pain has this way of stripping away our illusions and showing us what really matters in life. And in relationships, the strongest marriages are those that start over, are those second marriages with the same spouse. And you don't have to get divorced in order to have a second marriage. You can literally start your second marriage with your same spouse today, tomorrow. In relationships, if you've ever been the partner who's been hurt because your spouse wouldn't listen, wouldn't own their mistakes, wouldn't care, you know how damaging that is. And that's why developing humility before the hurt comes is so powerful. So how do we cultivate humility in our relationships if it doesn't come naturally to us? Because, like I said, it's not natural to most of us. Humility is intentionally cultivated, just like most other things in a healthy relationship. To be honest, it takes a lot of intention and effort. It takes planning. It takes you sitting down and saying, I know that this situation is coming up. How am I going to show humility in it? And doing those reps over and over and over. Because to be honest, you guys, we're all really just arrogant jackwagons walking around this earth. We really, really are. We're judging other people because they aren't wearing what we would wear, or they aren't doing what we would do, or they aren't responding how we would respond, or they don't show care the way that we would show care. It all comes back to us. If you really look at your thoughts during the day, how often are you judging someone or thinking less of someone because they aren't doing or saying or thinking or moving or reacting the way that you would? Well, here's some practical ways to develop humility if you find that you need a little bit more in your life. Number one, you're going to practice self reflection. Regularly ask, am I open to seeing my partner's point of view? Do I listen without interrupting or trying to quote unquote win the conversation? When was the last time I admitted I was wrong? Am I even willing to admit that I'm wrong? Do I truly listen to my partner or do I just wait for my turn to talk? By becoming aware of moments when pride or defensiveness creeps in, you can actively work to replace those reactions with humility. Number two, you're going to let go of the need to always be right. Again, the let them theory. If they think they're right, instead of proving why you are, just let them believe what they want to believe. How often has an opinion on something actually changed over Facebook? How often has an opinion changed on something when you're having one conversation with a friend or an acquaintance? Being right isn't going to make your relationship better either, but being open-minded will. When disagreements arise, ask yourself, do I want to be right or do I want to be connected? Checking your motive is step number one in getting real with yourself and having emotional sobriety. Why am I about to say what I'm about to say? Why am I using this tone? Why am I choosing this timing? What am I trying to gain, reveal, debunk, or get rid of by saying this? Why am I choosing these specific words? Number three, you're going to ask for feedback and receive it gracefully. Now, this is the key. A humble person isn't afraid to ask their partner, what's something that I can do better in our relationship? Do you feel heard and valued when we talk? Do you feel like I truly listen to you? Do you feel like I admit when I'm wrong? Is there anything that I do that makes you feel dismissed or unimportant? As you ask any or all of these questions, the key is going to be listening without getting defensive. There's going to be a really good chance that some of those questions are really hard to hear the answers to. One of the questions that's on my weekly marriage check-in for couples that I give as a resource is every week or at least a couple of times a month, you're checking in with your partner and saying, what's it like to be with me right now? That answer is not always going to be sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes it's going to be actually, you suck right now. You haven't been helping with the house. You haven't been helping with the kids. You've been really down. You've been in a crappy mood. You've been super stressed out. And then you're bringing that energy home. True humility is being willing to hear hard truths and use them as opportunities to grow. If your partner truly cares for you and they're coming to you about something, it's not because they want to tear you down. It's because they see potential in you. They see something that you don't see in yourself. That they love you so much that they want you to be the best version of yourself. Not for themselves, most likely, but for you. Because they know who you are at your core. And you are not living into that person right now. That's why they're bringing it up to you. If they didn't care, they wouldn't say anything. So instead of getting defensive, look at what they're saying as an opportunity for growth. Number 4, you're going to express gratitude regularly. Now, gratitude is not just writing 10 things down or 3 things down every day that you're grateful for. It's not being able to recite, oh, I'm grateful for my house and my job and my kids and my spouse and whatever. Like, gratitude and humility go hand in hand. It is being in the shower and being able to bring yourself to tears over having so much gratitude for running water, for hot water, for clean water. Because there's a lot of people out there that don't have those luxuries. It's recognizing and appreciating your partner's efforts, even and especially the small ones. The fact that they picked up your shoes for yet another day. The fact that they put your underwear in the hamper that was literally a finger's width away from where you laid your underwear. I was at a marriage retreat a couple of weeks ago in Kentucky, and one of the husbands was saying, I walk around and I'm listening to a lot of their conversations and kind of helping them and coaching them individually as they're having these conversations. And one of the husbands said, I am immensely grateful that you put my clothes away after you fold them and after you wash and dry and fold them. You don't have to do that. And he goes, and I knew you were having a really hard week last week because you set my folded clothes on the dresser instead of putting them away. And she asked, how did that make you feel? And he goes, honestly, it made me feel like I wasn't special anymore. Now, is this a filter of his own? Absolutely. But the point is, how many of you have things that your partner does for you that you don't even recognize? If you made a list of all the things that your partner did for you every single day, would you even get half of them? Would you get a quarter of them? Would you get all of them? You might. But where does your gratitude and humility lie in what your partner does for you and why? This is going to help you stay grounded and aware of what they bring to the relationship and how you're measuring up. Not in an I want to win kind of situation, but wouldn't marriages be better if the scale or the grade book was, did I outserve my partner today versus was I right more than I was wrong? Uh, did I prove that I was right? Was my perspective seen more? Humility is serving your partner. Humility is saying, you know what? Your needs and your boundaries and your emotions matter. Number 5, you're going to apologize early and often. Early as in as soon as you realize you messed up. Not 3 days later, not when your partner comes to you and says, you know what? I've been mad at you for like 3 weeks because you did X, Y, and Z. No. As soon as you realize that you messed up, and you're going to, you're human. But a healthy relationship doesn't thrive on I love yous. It thrives on 5-finger apologies. And these are going to be needed every single time you mess up. Even if it's small. A quick, I'm sorry for, I know it impacted you by, in the future I will you forgive me? Goes a long way. I have a friend that, God love him, he is one of the most growth-minded people you will ever meet in your life. But every night before he goes to bed, he does a reflection and he grades himself. How was I as a husband? How was I as a dad? How was I as a coach? How was I at my job? How was I as a son? How was I, he grades himself. And if he got a C the day before, he steps it up the next day in that particular area so that he's never getting a C every single day or a D every single day or even a B every single day. And you're not always going to have A pluses across the board. It's going to change every once in a while. But if your marriage is always the one to get a D plus instead of an A plus, how long do you think that marriage is going to last? Be accountable to yourself. Apologize when you need to apologize. Have humility. If faith is a part of your marriage, then ask God to soften your heart. You can pray for your spouse to have humility all you want. It never hurts. But from experience, I will flat out tell you that if you pray for your spouse, God is always going to change you in the process. always. Now, difficult conversations are where humility is tested the most. Whether you are discussing unmet needs, past hurts, ongoing frustrations, approaching these conversations with humility can make all the difference. Having humility in easy moments is one thing. It's so easy to have humility when you're really truly practicing it. But during conflict, that's where your reps are going to get a little bit harder. That's where you're going to be tested. So here's some tips. Okay, you're going to use I statements instead of you always or you never or blanket statements. So I feel like the other day when you did X, Y, and Z, that wasn't having integrity. I think that when you say this, you actually mean this. When you say this, I'm hearing you say this. Is that true? You're going to validate your partner's feelings even when you don't agree. This is one of the biggest misconceptions, is that validation automatically means agreement. It doesn't mean that at all. You can absolutely disagree with your partner and see where they're coming from. This is one of those things, like if your political affiliation, for example, is completely different. You can still understand why your partner would feel that way, or why they would be hurt, or why they would be scared, or why they would be struggling with a certain response of something and not agree with it. Pause before responding and ask, is what I'm about to say going to help or hurt this conversation? Is it going to help or hurt our connection? Is it going to help or hurt my partner? And admit your role in the problem. If there is conflict at all, both parties have played a part. There was one scenario back, several months ago before Mo moved back in and we reconciled, where he was just being a complete jerk. And my coach said, okay, in the conflict that you guys are having right now, what is your part? And it took me a hot minute to figure it out. But my part was, I allowed it. I allowed him to talk to me that way. I didn't shut the conversation down. I think we were on the phone. I think that's what the deal was. And I didn't just hang up in his face. He just kept going, and I just kept listening to it. That was my part in it. That was my only part in it. I stayed emotionally sober. I stayed completely level-headed. But at the same time, I allowed the disrespect when I should have just hung up and sent a text and said, when you can be more respectful, give me a call back. So if there is conflict at all, both parties have played a part. Now, you do not ever have to take all the blame or apologize for something that you didn't do. But having humility means owning your part, always, even if it's small. The goal isn't to let yourself be walked all over. The goal is, again, to create a relationship where both people feel valued, safe, and heard. So what does that sound like specifically? Well, number one, you're going to start with ownership. So before pointing out what your partner is doing wrong, take responsibility for your own part in the issue. For example, instead of, you never make time for me, try, I've been feeling really disconnected lately, and I realize I haven't spoken up about it sooner, but can we find some time to reconnect? 2, you're going to validate your partner's feelings. Again, even if you don't agree with everything they're saying, acknowledge that their feelings are valid. So instead of saying, that's not what happened, you're not living in reality. That's completely different. Try, I can see why you'd feel that way. I didn't intend for it to come across that way, but I hear you. Number 3, ask. Don't assume. Because let me tell you, in relationships, this is one of the biggest problems that I see most often, is that people are assuming. They assume that you already know what the other person is thinking or feeling or what they're going to do. And here's the thing. There is nothing more selfish than thinking for another person, because it doesn't give them a choice. It doesn't give them anywhere to go. You're saying, oh, this is what you're thinking. And they may not be thinking that at all. But if they start saying, no, that's not how I thought at all, now they sound defensive. Don't assume. So instead of saying, you don't even care about my feelings, try, I feel like I haven't been heard lately. Can you share what's been on your mind? Number 4, you're going to choose understanding over defensiveness. It is natural to want to defend yourself in a tough conversation, but humility allows you to pause and see things from your partner's perspective. So instead of, I'm just trying to explain myself, try, I hear that my words hurt you, and that wasn't my intention. How can I express this differently so it doesn't come across that way? Humility isn't about being passive, weak, or letting your partner walk all over you. It's about having the strength to admit when you're wrong, the wisdom to listen, and the courage to prioritize connection over ego. When humility is present in a relationship, conflict becomes easier to resolve, emotional intimacy deepens, and both partners feel seen, heard, and valued. I want you to build a love that lasts. And in order to do that, humility isn't optional, it is essential. So here's your challenge. This week, I want you to practice just one act of humility in your marriage. Maybe it's apologizing first. Maybe it's asking for feedback. Maybe it's just listening better. And if you're ready to take this to the next level, I would love to help you. Coaching isn't just for couples in crisis. It is for any marriage that wants to grow. You can find more resources at www.recognizingpotential.com. You can DM me on Instagram at married.and.connected. And if this episode resonated with you at all, please consider sharing it with your spouse, send it to a friend, or post about it on social media. As always, I'd love to hear from you. Again, you can DM me on Instagram or leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. Thank you so much for being here, for choosing growth, and for investing in your marriage. See you next time. Hey there, and welcome to the Married and Connected podcast. I want to take a moment to share an important disclaimer, not for myself, but for my legal team. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. And while I am a certified marriage coach, I am not a licensed therapist, counselor, or medical professional. The information, opinions, and advice shared here are based on my experience, research, and expertise, but they are not a substitute for professional mental health, legal, or medical advice. Every relationship is unique, and what works for one couple may not work for another. If you're facing serious relationship struggles, mental health concerns, or other challenges, I encourage you to seek the guidance of a qualified professional. By listening to this podcast, you agree that I, Cameron Alaricki, and the Married and Connected podcast are not responsible for any decisions that you make based on the content shared here. Your relationship, your choices, and your outcomes are ultimately in your hands.